If you think the truth is dark, wait until you hit subscribe. Because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice. The alarm sirens cut through the cold Australian dawn like a blade. Red lights pulsed across the concrete corridors, reflecting off steel doors and casting long, violent shadows down the empty hallway. Officers sprinted past each other, radios crackling, boots slamming against the linoleum floor. Every man inside Goulburn Supermax had seen chaos before, but this morning was different. This was fear. A single message repeated through the speakers. Code Black. Cell Block A. Inmate missing. Repeat. Inmate missing. Missing. Inside the most heavily fortified Supermax prison in the Southern Hemisphere. No one believed it. Not at first. Goulburn was the kind of place where escape wasn't just impossible, it was unthinkable. Cells were sealed in layers of concrete, every corner under surveillance, every second monitored. This was the prison where the most dangerous individuals in the country were locked in silence, 23 hours a day. The tomb, guards called it. A place where sound goes to die. But now, someone had slipped through the cracks. Detective Lucas Harrow arrived on scene within minutes, stepping out of his car as the heavy gates clanged shut behind him. He wore his usual dark coat, collar turned up against the wind, and his expression was as cold as the morning air. "Who's gone?" he asked, walking alongside Warden Elise Marlowe, a rigid woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for absolute control. "Elijah Roone," she said. "You've read the file." Harrow stopped mid-step. Everyone in law enforcement had read the file. Elijah Roone was once a quiet, unassuming man. But years earlier, he'd been convicted in a case that shook the country, a string of disappearances, all connected by one thing. Every victim had last been seen speaking to Roone. The evidence had been strong, but even then something felt off. No bodies. No confessions. No clear motive. Just a pattern of vanishing people and a man who insisted he was innocent. The public called him the Whisperer, because no one ever heard from his victims again. Harrow frowned. "Roone doesn't strike me as the type to orchestrate an escape." "That's the problem," Warden Marlowe said. "He didn't orchestrate anything. The cameras show nothing. The sensors triggered nothing. His cell was locked all night." "Locked but empty?" Harrow asked. "Empty," she confirmed. Harrow followed her into cell block A. The temperature dropped immediately, by design. The isolation units were chilled to keep inmates compliant and uncomfortable. The blue-tinted lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow. Roone's cell was open now, but everything inside was untouched. Bed made. Toilet clean. Even the stainless steel desk was organized, his few possessions lined in perfect order. Harrow crouched near the bed and noticed something odd, a single slip of folded paper tucked beneath the pillow. "Did your officers find this?" he asked. Warden Marlowe shook her head. There was nothing there before. He unfolded the paper carefully. One sentence, written in neat block letters. "You locked away the wrong man." Harrow's jaw tightened. "This wasn't left for you. This was left for me." "How would he know you were coming?" Marlowe asked. Harrow didn't answer. He didn't have one. Behind them, boots echoed against the floor. Officer Grant Hayes approached, his face pale. "You need to see this," Hayes said. "It's from last night's surveillance review." They followed him to the monitoring room, a dim, blue-lit cavern lined with screens. Hayes rewound footage from Roone's cell to exactly 2:14 a.m. Roone sat on his bed, eyes fixed on the wall. "Still. Calm. Watch carefully," Hayes said. The footage played. Roone didn't move. Not even a blink. Then the screen flickered. For one frame, maybe two, Roone appeared distorted, stretched almost as if the camera had glitched. When the image stabilized, the bed was empty. "That's it?" Harrow asked. "That's it," Hayes said. 2 frames of static and then he's gone. "No door opened," Marlowe added. "No body heat sensors triggered. Nothing." "So you're telling me," Harrow said slowly, "that a man locked in a concrete box with one steel door vanished on camera without physically moving?" No one spoke. Because there was nothing to say. Harrow leaned closer to the screen, freezing the glitched frame. Rune's face was caught mid-distortion, not twisted in fear or panic, but in something more unsettling. Peace. This wasn't an escape, Harrow said. This was a message. But why disappear? Hayes asked. He was serving life. What was the point? Maybe he wasn't trying to escape the prison, Harrow said. Maybe he's trying to escape the truth. Marlowe folded her arms. There's no evidence he didn't commit those disappearances. There was no evidence he did, Harrow corrected. A radio crackled in the background. Control to Warden. We've got a situation in the archives room. The three exchanged looks. They headed down a stairwell, deeper into the facility. The archives room was rarely touched, old case files, security logs, historical records. But the moment they entered, they saw it, a single metal cabinet pried open. Inside, hundreds of files had been pulled out and scattered across the floor like a storm of paper. Harrow bent down and sifted through the folders. All of them belonged to Rune's original investigation. What the hell? Hayes whispered. These files are restricted, Marlowe said. Only senior staff have access. Harrow picked up a document. Rune's interrogation transcript. The last page had a fresh crease, as if someone had read it moments before. Then he noticed something else. Footprints. Faint, dusty, leading toward the back wall. Follow them, Harrow instructed. The print stopped at a maintenance panel. Hayes forced it open. Inside was darkness, a tight vertical shaft leading downward into the building's oldest and used ventilation system. Harrow aimed his flashlight inside. Something glinted. A metal tag. Prison issued. He reached in and pulled it out. It was Rune's ID bracelet, but the back of it had been scratched with a small, deliberate line of text. Look beneath what you buried. Harrow's pulse quickened. This wasn't an escape route. This was a trail. Rune wasn't running from them. He was leading them somewhere. Warden Marlowe stepped back, unsettled. Detective, what exactly did we bury? Harrow didn't answer immediately. His mind raced back to the original case, the one that had never felt complete, never felt clean. Because Rune had told them something years ago, something no one had believed. The missing aren't dead, he had whispered during the final interview. They're hidden. And now, maybe the truth was clawing its way back to the surface. Harrow turned to the others. We need to open the basement vault, he said.
Now.
Marlowe's face went pale. That floor has been sealed for decades. There's nothing down there. Harrow stared at her. Then why, he said, holding up the ID bracelet. Is Rune pointing us to it? They stood in silence for a breathless moment. Then the lights above them flickered, once, twice, and went dark. Somewhere beneath the prison, a heavy metal door slammed shut. The sound echoed upward like a warning. Or a countdown. And what they were about to discover below Goulburn Supermax would change everything they thought they knew about Elijah Rune. The emergency lights flickered back on with a low electrical hum, bathing the corridor in a ghostly blue glow. Detective Lucas Harrow scanned the ceiling as if expecting the darkness to return and swallow them whole. For a Supermax built like a fortress, power flickers didn't just happen. Not here. Warden Marlowe steadied her breath. Basement vault. Let's move. They followed the narrow hallway deeper into the facility. Officers joined them, but even their presence didn't make the air feel less suffocating. Goulburn Supermax had always been a place of fear, but this was different. This was the feeling of walking into a secret someone never intended them to uncover. When they reached the final steel door, Marlowe swiped her master keycard. A thick, hydraulic hiss echoed as the lock disengaged. The door groaned open, exposing a long concrete stairwell descending into darkness. No lights. No cameras. Only cold air drifting up, carrying the earthy smell of dust and something older, long forgotten. Hayes clicked on his flashlight. I didn't even know this level existed. It doesn't, Marlowe said. Officially. Harrow started down the steps without hesitation, the beam of his flashlight slicing through the black. Rune's cryptic message echoed in his mind. Look beneath what you buried. As they reached the bottom, the walls turned rough, unfinished. This wasn't part of the modern structure. This was part of the original 19th century foundation, a place built for isolation long before the concept of human rights. Rows of rusted storage cages line the corridor, filled with crumbling boxes and outdated equipment. Thick chains lay coiled on the ground like metal snakes. The deeper they walked, the colder it grew, until their breaths became faint clouds in the darkness. Hayes stopped suddenly. "Did you hear that?" They fell silent. A distant metallic clank echoed from somewhere ahead. Then footsteps. Slow. Dragging. But not approaching. Retreating. "Rune," Harrow whispered. No answer. They moved forward, following the sound until they reached the old vault door. It was a massive slab of reinforced steel, easily a foot thick. On the surface, the paint had peeled away, revealing deep clawed scratches, not from tools, but from fingernails. "How old is this?" Hayes asked, his voice low. "Older than all of us," Marlowe said. Harrow knelt and examined the floor. Dust patterns. Footprints. Some fresh. Some decades old. "Elijah Rune was here," Harrow said. "Recently." "Then where is he now?" Hayes asked. Harrow pointed at the vault door. "Inside." Marlowe shook her head. "Impossible. This door hasn't been opened since the 90s. The lock is mechanical and sealed." "Then explain the footprints," Harrow said evenly. Marlowe hesitated. She couldn't. Hayes stepped back. "If he's inside, he either found a way to open it or someone else did." The idea hung in the air like a threat. Harrow placed his hand on the cold metal door. There was a small control box on the wall, primitive with 2 switches and a keyhole so old it was practically fossilized. Marlowe inserted a brass key from her pocket, tarnished from decades of disuse, and turned it. The lock clicked. "On 3, she said. They braced themselves. 1, 2, 3. The vault door groaned open, releasing a burst of stale air that smelled of rust and forgotten years. Their flashlights revealed a wide chamber beneath the prison. Dust coated every surface except for a narrow path leading toward the center, freshly disturbed. "Someone's been down here," Harrow said. Hayes lifted his radio. "Control, we need backup in the sub-basement." Static. Then silence. Not even a crackle. Marlowe swallowed. "We're on our own." They stepped inside. The chamber was huge, circular, with walls made of reinforced stone. Old chains hung from iron hooks. There were remnants of broken furniture, collapsed shelves, and file boxes rotting away. But in the far corner, something stood out. A faint blue light glowed from beneath a fallen metal cabinet. Harrow approached cautiously. "Hayes, help me move this." Together, they lifted the cabinet, revealing a small metal lockbox. It pulsed faintly with the blue glow. "What kind of box glows?" Hayes muttered. Harrow didn't answer. He opened it. Inside was a stack of photographs, hundreds of them, dusty but preserved. Harrow lifted the top one. His breath caught. A photograph of a woman standing beside a rural bus stop. Date stamped, 1998. One of Rune's supposed victims. He lifted another. A teenage boy walking home from school. A man in a grocery store. A woman at a train station. All people who had vanished without explanation. All connected to Rune. Marlowe stared. This can't be." "These photos were taken long before Rune was ever arrested," Harrow said. Hayes' face paled. "Are you saying someone was watching them? Tracking them? Documenting them?" Harrow said. "Years before any disappearance." Marlowe shook her head in disbelief. "But why store them here, under the prison?" "Because someone wanted them hidden," Harrow said. He reached the bottom of the stack and froze. The last photo was of a man sitting on a park bench, staring ahead with a calm, almost serene expression. Elijah Rune, taken a year before any of the disappearances. And in the background, blurred but unmistakable, a figure was watching him from the shadows. Rune wasn't stalking his victims, Harrow whispered. He was being stalked. The ground rumbled faintly. Dust rained from the ceiling. "Did you feel that?" Hayes asked. Before anyone could respond, the vault door slammed shut with a deafening clang. Hayes sprinted toward it, pounding the steel. "Hey, open up." Marlowe rattled the wheel lock. It's sealed from the outside. Harrow scanned the room. Someone lured us down here. Hayes jerked around. But who? Rune's missing. Harrow lifted the last photograph again. Rune's calm face. The shadowy figure watching him. He's not running, Harrow said softly. He's leading us to the truth. A sudden sound echoed behind them, the sharp scrape of metal across concrete. They spun around. A small side door, one embedded so seamlessly into the stone wall that none of them noticed it before, was swinging open. A faint blue light glowed from within, matching the light from the lockbox. Hayes raised his flashlight. Detective, there's something in there. Harrow stepped toward the doorway, heart pounding. He pushed it open the rest of the way. The room beyond was narrow, lined with old lockers. In the center stood a single wooden chair. On it a tape recorder, dusty but functional. Harrow pressed the play button. A crackle of static filled the chamber. Then a voice.
Calm.
Quiet. Elijah Rune. Detective Harrow, if you're listening to this, it means you finally followed the trail. Harrow's breath caught. Rune continued. Everything you were told about me was a lie. I was never the monster you believed. The real monsters built this prison and buried the truth beneath it. The tape clicked. End of recording. Hayes swallowed hard. Detective, what does this mean? But before Harrow could respond, a second voice echoed faintly from the corridor. Footsteps.
Slow.
Deliberate. Someone or something was walking toward the vault. Hayes killed his flashlight. The others followed. Harrow whispered, "Stay quiet." The footsteps approached the sealed vault door, then stopped. Silence. Then a voice whispered through the steel, soft, almost tender. "You're getting close." A chill crawled down Harrow's spine. Because the voice wasn't Rune's. It was someone else. Someone older. Someone who knew exactly where they were. And exactly what they had just discovered. The voice on the other side of the vault door drifted through the steel like a cold wind.
Soft.
Patient. Almost amused. "You're getting close." Hayes stepped back until his shoulder touched the stone wall. The hair on his arms rose. Warden Marlowe gripped her flashlight as if it were a weapon, though its weak beam was now their only shield against the darkness. Detective Harrow didn't move. He stared at the vault door, mind racing. That voice wasn't Elijah Rune's. Rune's voice was gentle, breathy, fragile even. This one was controlled, confident, familiar in a way that sent an uncomfortable tightening through Harrow's chest. The silence that followed stretched thin. Then the footsteps retreated, slowly, deliberately, fading down the corridor until there was nothing left but the low hum of the emergency lights. Marlowe exhaled shakily. "We need to get out of here.
Now."
"Not yet," Harrow said. "We're missing something. Something Rune wanted us to find." Hayes pointed toward the locker-lined chamber. "Detective, the tape recorder. Maybe there's more." Harrow turned the chair over. A small envelope had been taped to the underside. His heart thudded. Inside was a second cassette tape. Rune's handwriting labeled it with one word: truth. Harrow inserted it into the recorder and pressed play. More static. Then Rune's voice again, tired, fraying at the edges, but steady. "Detective Harrow, you always believed something was wrong with my case. You were right. The disappearances, they weren't random. And they weren't mine." Harrow's jaw tightened. Rune continued. "Years before I was arrested, someone began watching me, following me, leaving things where I would find them, photographs, notes, warnings. I tried to tell the police. They said I was unstable, hallucinating." Static crackled. "But I wasn't hallucinating. They wanted me trapped. And you'll find proof in the locker marked 17. The tape ended abruptly. Locker 17 was on the far wall, its door rusted shut. Hayes tugged it open with a metallic screech. Inside was a single manila folder. Marlowe held her breath. "Please, not what I think it is." Harrow opened it carefully. Inside were transcripts, dozens of them. Interrogations. Witness interviews. Surveillance notes. But not from Rune's file. These were internal documents from inside Goulburn Supermax. Some dating back 25 years. Some stamped confidential, do not archive. And one name appeared over and over again. A senior corrections officer. A man with a spotless record, a respected career, and decades of access to every corner of the prison. Arthur Wynne. Hayes frowned. Who the hell is Arthur Wynne? Marlowe stared at the papers, color draining from her face. Wynne was a senior officer here in the late 90s.
Before my time.
People said he was strict, old school, but effective. Harrow flipped the page. A surveillance log from 1998. Officer Wynne observed following a civilian near Mossvale Station. No official reason provided. Another. Officer Wynne present at the scene of civilian disappearance 3 hours before police report filed. Another. Officer Wynne requests access to lower facility. Request granted. And then, stapled to the back, a photograph. The same one they found earlier.
Rune sitting on the park bench.
And behind him, the blurred figure in the shadows. But this photo was clearer. Higher resolution. The shadowy figure was no longer shadow. His face was visible. Fully lit. Arthur Wynne. Marlowe staggered back. That's impossible. Wynne retired years ago. Harrow stared at the photograph. No, he said quietly. He didn't retire. Hayes blinked. What do you mean?
He disappeared, Harrow said.
Vanished from his home in 2019. No trace. No belongings missing. The case was closed as voluntary disappearance. Marlowe pressed her hand against her temple. Detective, are you suggesting a former officer, one with deep access to the prison, is responsible for the disappearances? Not just responsible, Harrow said. He built the entire narrative around Rune. He framed him, buried evidence, and then he vanished before anyone could connect the dots. A deep metallic thud echoed from the corridor. They froze. A second thud followed. Then a dragging sound, metal against concrete, like something heavy being pulled toward the vault. Hayes whispered, "He's still here." The dragging stopped just outside the door. Silence. Then another whisper, calm and chilling. "Harrow, you always ask the wrong questions." Marlowe's breath caught. "He knows her name." Harrow whispered, "He knows everything." Because Wynne wasn't just an officer. He had been part of the prison for decades. He had access to every blind spot, every off-record area, every unmonitored chamber. And he had used Goulburn not as a workplace, but as a hunting ground. Hayes mouthed silently. "What do we do?" Before Harrow could answer, the vault door lock clicked.
Once. Twice.
It was being unlocked from the outside. "Back," Harrow hissed. They retreated into the locker chamber as the vault door began to open slowly, the hinges screeching like nails across metal. Harrow gripped the tape recorder, the only proof they had. He scanned the room for exits. There was only one. The narrow maintenance shaft Rune had pointed them toward. "Hurry," Harrow said. "Through here." Marlowe and Hayes climbed in first, crawling through the tight metal tunnel. Harrow followed, gripping the sides. Behind them, footsteps entered the vault. Slow, heavy, unhurried. Wynne was inside. They crawled for what felt like forever until the shaft dropped into a service corridor near the old electrical room. They tumbled out, gasping. Marlowe turned to Harrow. "We need to get out and alert the entire prison." But Harrow shook his head.
No.
"If we declare an emergency now, Wynne will slip through the cracks again. He knows every blind spot, every evacuation route. So we're trapped." Hayes asked. "No," Harrow said. "We have one advantage. He thinks he's hunting us." Harrow held up the last photograph, Rune on the bench, Wynne watching. "But he doesn't know we're finally hunting him." They moved through the service tunnels, emerging into a corridor behind the administrative wing.
Hayes tried his radio again. Static.
Then, "Harrow, come to intake alone." The voice wasn't Wynne's. It was Elijah Rune's. Hayes shook his head violently. "How is he even?"
"He's alive," Harrow said.
"And Wynne has him." Marlowe grabbed Harrow's coat. "Detective, it's a trap." "I know," Harrow said. "But runes are only linked to the truth." They headed toward the intake area, the only section where prisoners entered the facility. The hallway was silent.
Too silent.
Their footsteps echoed unnervingly. The intake room door was ajar. Harrow pushed it open slowly. Inside, the lights flickered overhead. The holding cells were empty except one. Rune sat inside, unharmed, calm, hands resting in his lap. His eyes lifted as Harrow approached. "Detective," Rune said softly. "You made it." Harrow unlocked the cell door. "I need the truth," he said. "All of it." Rune stepped out. "Then you must hurry." "Hurry for what?" Hayes asked. Rune looked toward the far corner of the room. "For him." Harrow spun. Arthur Wynne stood in the doorway.
Silent.
Expressionless. As if he had been waiting for them. No weapon. No rage. Just cold certainty. "You've found the truth," Wynne said quietly. "But you don't understand it." Harrow stepped in front of Rune. "You framed him. You hunted innocent people for years." Wynne tilted his head. "I didn't hunt them. I protected them." Marlowe's voice shook. Protected from what? Wynne's eyes darkened. From the ones who were never found. Silence fell like a curtain. Harrow's pulse hammered. "What does that mean?" he demanded. Wynne stepped backward toward the shadowed hallway. "You're asking the wrong questions again, detective." Then he whispered. "They were never missing." A power surge exploded overhead. Every light in the room went dead. Darkness swallowed them whole. A door slammed. Footsteps vanished. When the emergency lights finally flickered back on, Wynne was gone. Rune stood silently beside Harrow. And the last words Wynne spoke echoed in Harrow's mind like a warning. They were never missing. If Wynne hadn't taken them, if Rune hadn't harmed them, then someone or something else had. And the truth behind Goulburn Supermax wasn't buried in its walls. It was still out there, waiting.